Welcome back to the Teeth Time podcast. It is your host, Steven here, and I am on my winter break here in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been able to come home and enjoy some time off from dental school and to get a nice, well-deserved break. Do some things that are away from school, enjoy life a little bit, which is the beauty of being in school. I often complain about it at this point in my life, but everybody else who I know and love is working right now, as you do when you become an adult, and I'm on break. So this was an interesting opportunity for me to get home and do something that I actually kind of thought of doing a long time ago. And now the opportunity has presented itself, and so I'm following through with that. And that is to bring on a very special guest to the podcast, my younger brother. So Nick is my younger brother. He's 14 months younger than me, and he basically over the last couple of years has been going through the pre-vet process to become a veterinarian. And this is something that's been very special for me as his older brother. It was interesting to watch him make the decision on which profession he would go into, especially considering the fact that I was so strongly interested in dentistry. It's also been really interesting to watch him on his journey to basically get there. And a few weeks ago, at the beginning of December, he was accepted to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. So basically, this was a unique opportunity to bring on somebody who isn't going to be a dentist, isn't a dentist now or a dental student, but someone who I think has a unique perspective about this entire process, which, as you may see, is very similar in many ways to what you go through as a pre-dental student. So with all of that being said, Nick, welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Well, hello. It's
Can you put that up to your face a little bit?
Yeah. It's it's good to be here. I have a voice recording going on my phone here, so it's
gonna be a janky setup. I don't have two microphones, so I had to come up with a way to basically get some sort of audio. And if you can just like hold it up to your face, like when you talk, that'd be perfect.
It'll work.
Cool. Well, thank you for being here. This is like something that we talked about like a long time ago. I think it was months ago. I had the idea. I was like, if Nick gets into vet school, I think it'd be cool to have him on the podcast just because he's had such a rich and varied pre-vet couple of years where he has had so many different experiences, and I thought he'd have some valuable insight. So let's just start, as I always do with each of my guests. Go ahead and introduce yourself, give a little background on just who you are and like kind of what you're doing.
So I'm Nick. I am Steven's younger brother. I'm 23, almost 24 now. I graduated from the University of Tennessee in May of this year. I majored in animal science. And I'm assuming you guys know Steven pretty well at this point, but we grew up playing competitive sports. Hockey and lacrosse mainly, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my life until I got into college, and it was after my freshman year. We can get into this a little later, but I went into college kind of blind. I was exploratory for my first year, and
we'll get into that. So I wanted to start with you're in a dentist family. Your dad is a dentist. I'm a dentist, or going to be here in a couple years. And our brother-in-law is a dentist. We have a lot of dentistry in our family. And I think growing up, people have asked me before, like, did your dad like force you to become a dentist or like whatever? I've answered it. He never forced me to do anything. He strongly recommended that I consider it because he knows what a good profession it is, and in general, what the things that the healthcare profession can offer you. So you got to a point when we were a few years ago, I guess it would have been, like you said, your freshman, sophomore year around then in college, where you hadn't figured it out yet. No. And you had to make a decision because, once again, there was so much dentistry in your family, and I think there was some talk that you would follow into it as well. Yeah. So talk about the experience of going against what your family kind of had thought of for you and finding something new.
Something from an early age. I don't know if it was the fact that I just hated going to the dentist.
Nobody likes it. Oh, well, maybe some, but.
And having my father doing it made it a bit of a different dynamic than seeing any other sort of doctor, physician. From an early age, I never liked it as a whole. I don't know, something just didn't seem right about it. I've kind of narrowed it down to two things. I don't find myself enjoying working directly on a human, with them being able to look back at me and talk. Right. And then the other thing is dentistry is localized solely to the mouth. And I kind of figured this out as I kind of went along. But with veterinary medicine, it's obviously the whole body of an animal, and also there's all sorts of different species of animals. So it's much of, not to talk down on dentistry, but it's a much broader sort of medicine in a sense. So I kind of figured that out as I went along in college. But that was kind of the main thing. And you decided your freshman year of college?
I mean, it was always in consideration for me, and I really got serious about it probably sophomore year.
Our dad we grew up, like I said, playing competitive sports. I had to make a decision if I wanted to go up north to pursue hockey, leave my life behind here in Nashville, and devote my life to hockey, waking up every morning and playing basically 7 days a week. And I didn't have the love for the game that you need to have if you're going to go and pursue a sport like that. So I had to make that decision before my 7th grade. And like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point through high school. So in high school, I knew that I was interested in science, and I always was interested in medicine, and kind of how the body works was always really interesting to me. But I never really considered vet med until college. I think there's a time in most people's lives as a child, if you grow up with animals, I think a lot of kids go through a phase when they're like, oh, I want to be a vet. And I definitely had that point in my life when I was a kid. And I remember I just kind of put it past. I was a child, so I didn't think deep into it. But I remember just thinking, oh, it's going to be too hard. I'm not smart enough. And I just put it in the back of my brain and kind of forgot about veterinary medicine until... And this is kind of like the start of my story, was when after my freshman year, I was sitting out on my back patio with my father, and he just brought it up. He was like, what about going to vet school? And I was like, huh. I hadn't considered that since I was a kid. And I had a year under my belt. I had a 3.5 GPA after my freshman year, and I realized if I want to do this is something I could do. I mean, I just have to devote my life to it, really, and work towards it. But I knew at that point that there's no reason why I couldn't do it. So honestly, I kind of went blindly into the profession and into animal science, because another reason was involved some of my classes not taking multiple calculus courses, because math is my least strong subject by far. Like, I just despise math. So like I said, I was exploratory up to that point, and I kind of wanted to go down a STEM route, like biology major, something, biochemistry, something like that. But those majors required multiple calculus courses, and I found animal science, which only required basic calculus and then a statistics course. And I was like, well, this is great. I won't have to do that. Yeah. So I really did go blindly into the animal science major and the profession. Yeah, I just went on a limb, and I was like, this sounds like a great idea. And Dad told me that he had the idea because of our dogs veterinarians. He went to see the vet with our dogs, and our vet told him that this is a great time for males to enter the profession, because the profession has... I don't know what year it was. I think it was early 2000s when the percentage of veterinarians females surpassed males in the profession. So it used to be a male-dominated profession, and then the pendulum swung towards females, and now it's still predominantly females, but it's a good time for males to enter the profession, because there's not a ton of male applicants applying to vet school, and I hadn't considered any of that at that point. But
did it because that's like to me, at least, when I hear that story, and I know you obviously, and you're not someone who tends to fear things, but did it scare you at all to kind of make a decision that was very, very different, and in a way forging the path for the first time in your family and doing something different? Was that scary at all?
I really didn't think I didn't think about it that way. You know,
Okay.
I just, something about it felt right. I knew how much I loved animals at that point in my life. Like I said, I knew I loved, or I was interested in medicine and science, and I knew it was something that I could definitely find myself enjoying a lot. I didn't really think too deep at that point. Yeah. And then it wasn't until, and this is getting into my whole story with all my experiences and whatnot, but the next summer after my sophomore year, and this is kind of I was thinking about this, is kind of like a reassuring thing for pre-vet students, if there's any pre-vet students watching this. I didn't get my first vet experiences was after my sophomore year. That was my first time in a vet hospital. And a lot of these kids that get in on a first try or second try, really, they've been doing this since high school shadowing. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until after my sophomore year of college. So I at that point felt behind. You know, I knew a lot of the kids that I knew in the major and then were pre-vet were, you know, doing this for already a couple years. And I knew it before or during my sophomore year, I was like, I gotta get into a hospital. Like, this is, so to kind of answer your question, it was kind of like, I remember leaving my first day after the first hospital I worked at, and I didn't even work there. I was shadowing because they didn't have a paid position, but I had a family friend who knew the vet, and she set me up at this place. And I knew after my first day coming home, it was only like 5 hours in there, I was like, this is it. Like, I loved it. Like, I watched how the daily operations go in a vet hospital, and I just knew that I knew it was something that I could see myself doing. And that's kind of how this whole road has been. Everything I've done up until this point has been very enjoyable. Like, I've loved every bit of it, and that's, we'll go into it, but I've explored research. I've explored all sorts of different fields in the profession, obviously large and small animal. But it's just, I didn't even really think about, you know, there's no vets in our family. And
and that's kind of what I was trying to say, is the type of person you are. You don't really think about the stuff like that. It probably would have been scarier for me.
And in general, I'm not a planner. Like, maybe that has something to do with that. I don't like to plan things even weeks or two in advance. I'm really just a go with the flow type of person. Because I feel like if I plan, then I stress out more, and I just don't find a real reason in planning, because it usually doesn't happen the way it's planned. Right. And then it's just like,
I understand that. So I think it's important at this point, because my listeners and my fans and viewers are all dental students or pre-dental students, most of them. I have a few people that come from different professions, and I'm very thankful for them. But it is important, I think, to kind of explain the difference between pre-dental and pre-vet. So from my perspective, because I have the pre-dental experience, the biggest thing for us is our DAT score, which is our standardized test score. And that's a big deal. I think, I'm not on an admissions committee, but I think that's probably what schools look at. That's like their number one thing. It's just sort of a standard playing field. They can you can compare a student, 1-to-1. So with vet, it's you don't anymore have an upper standardized exam. So the objective is experiences, essentially, and grades.
So it used to be they accepted the GRE was the standardized test up until 2020, and it was interesting because I heard in 2019. I'll talk about these experiences later on, but I was in Costa Rica for a vet trip, and I heard one of these girls that was a couple years older than me that was in the process of applying, saying that vet schools as a whole in the country are kind of moving away from the GRE. They don't think it's a good representation of students as a whole. So I heard that, and then a few months later, COVID hit, and I think it was the perfect time for vet schools as a whole to kind of get rid of the whole GRE. So luckily, and I so relieved, but luckily the first time I applied, which was in 2020, I didn't have to take the GRE. I didn't have to take a standardized test. So, and it's a huge difference between being pre-med, pre-dental, and pre-vet is there's no standardized test, which, like you said, I would think it's the biggest hurdle. I think. I want to keep you directed because he's a rambler. Yeah, I am rambling.
You're a rambler. It's all right. This is probably different for you. I'm used to it, but let's just talk about because I remember being a young college student and hearing you have to have these experiences in the field if you want to apply, and it freaked me out. I was like, wait a minute, I have to go out and do stuff. For me, it was actually a little bit more like service based than like actually dental experience, because this may not be a true statement, but I feel like there are a lot more things you can do as a college student to help out in a vet scenario. Yeah. There are like techs and all sorts of different things you can do. With dentistry, it's like you have a dentist and a dental assistant and a hygienist, I guess. And there are lab techs. You can work in an office and do certain things, but it's a little harder to like participate in the profession itself, because everyone who does so, there's like limited roles is kind of what I'm trying to say. So a lot of it for me was service. That's a rambly way to just ask the question. How do you get into that first experience, and like, where do you go to look? I know what I did, but what was your kind of experience with that to start doing the pre-vet stuff, like the veterinary experiences, and then the service stuff?
That's where a lot of people struggle. I think getting into a hospital or getting into any sort of a vet assistant position or just shadowing in general. I got lucky, as I mentioned earlier. One of my best friend's mother grew up with one of the vets in town, and she reached out to him, and he called me and said he didn't have a paid position, but I could come in for half the day. And it's tough because I guess I don't really have any sort of great advice as to that. I would say you just need to put yourself out there. Talking about the very beginning, because once you get your foot in the door and you start getting some experience, then you can start getting hired as vet assistants.
It's all about connections. Like, you have to, once you start meeting people, then you meet someone who, I have this friend who does this, and then you can.
But you mentioned service, and the way that I kind of view vet school admissions and what type of people they're looking for, and it's same with any sort of these pre-professional professions, is they want a well-rounded candidate. You need to stand out, and without that standardized test, you really have to hit all these points. So volunteering, service, research isn't required, but research looks great. You need a varying amount of vet experience. Couple thousand hours is a good range, and then GPA is huge.
Yeah.
But and then what you do in college, clubs, sports, leadership positions, just all sorts of stuff. You really have to push yourself to get out of your comfort zone, which I had to do. I mean, you know me. I'm pretty quiet, but you really have to push yourself. And I can talk about what I did, but there's a lot.
And so one of the things that we always say in our family about Nick is that he basically took the reins on his life and just went full force, full head of steam into it, and basically just paved his own road. Found a bunch of wonderful experiences that he's enjoyed over the past couple of years, and ultimately was accepted, which is great, because my experience was a little bit more maybe cookie cutter, I guess. I kind of did the things I needed to do, and I was lucky to be accepted. You really went out there and took the bull by the horns. And so you have, I looked at his application. It was ridiculous. It's the same application format as what we have in dental school. And his list of experiences was like, you had to scroll for days to get down to the bottom. It was huge. It was a lot more than I had. So you can't talk about all of them. And we would be here for days, but I do think that there are some that, like, one thing that I've noticed about these professional schools is that it's really hard to understand what you're getting yourself into unless you go out and really try to experience it. It's hard for dentistry. I mean, in dentistry, you have to try to go shadow dentists, which is kind of difficult to do sometimes. A lot of people have their practice. They like the way it's run, and they don't want people, coming in and doing certain things. And also, you don't really understand. Like, I didn't understand what dental school was like when I was a pre-dental student. That's why I try to vlog and show prospective students just like a little bit of the day-to-day. Right. So I had no idea what the labs are like and everything. The same is probably true for vet. Yep. So try to explain to me or tell me, like, what were some of the things that were really important in forming that. Because right now you're very, very happy and solid. Like, I'm going to be a vet, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
But you maybe weren't always that way. So talk about maybe one or two that really stood out to you and make you excited about the profession.
One thing there's a couple things, but there's some things that you need to go through in your head to really know for sure that this is it. And that does take time and experiences. But one thing that I kind of had to figure out, and I had these service learning trips to Central America, which were very formative in this whole process and this decision. But you need to figure out why, and that sounds kind of cliche, but you really why you want to do it. And I brought up Central America because I saw the way of life for not only the humans down there, but the animals down there. And I really realized that there's so much that goes into this. And I realized how much I really enjoyed the simple process. It's not simple, but the process of taking a sick or injured animal and helping them. And I realized that in my life is what makes me the happiest and makes me feel fulfilled. And a lot of the big no-no for vet school interviews is they'll ask you why are you here, and a lot of people say, I love animals, and of course you love animals. Like that's not.
We all do.
Yeah, not everyone.
I certainly do.
Yeah, you do. You need to really pick your brain and
it's gotta be deeper than that.
Yeah, you got to really figure it out. To go back to that question, you need to put yourself, and this is a challenge, but like I said, if you get your foot in the door and you start opening these areas, you need to put yourself in many, many different experiences within the profession, working under different doctors, putting yourself in their shoes and saying, how would I handle this situation? There's a lot of things that happen day to day that you don't really understand until you have to do it and go through it. A big thing is euthanasia.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't really think deep on it until they have to do it. And it's to my knowledge and through my experiences, it's probably the most challenging thing to do as a vet is put down anywhere from 1 to 5 animals a day, even could be way more. But and
it's not a physical challenge. It's like an emotional challenge.
And it's something that you have to do, and it never gets easier. Is kind of the way I've figured it out, and it's not fun to do, but you have to remind yourself that it is the most humane and the best option for this animal at this moment. And it doesn't make it any easier because you have to, in handling the clients, watching their loved one for so many years in an instant be gone, you have to console those people. And it's time after time. Every experience is different with that. Like it's tough. And I think not everyone, but there's some people that go into the profession and really haven't explored something like euthanasia or live animal research and surgery, maybe for surgery for teaching purposes. Yeah. Putting animals through something that maybe they don't necessarily need to be put through for a teaching purpose, for example. Like there's so many things that happen that are emotionally straining, that are tough.
Yeah.
And working with a bunch of different doctors and different hospitals and different situations with different animals, you really need to do all of these things and come up with these conclusions in your head. And we'll get to this, but the interview, at least for UT and a lot of these other schools, not every school does interviews, but you have to show them that you know this stuff and you've been through all this and you can handle it, basically.
Yeah. And we're all at home listening right now, thankful that we don't have to do those things in dentistry. And that was one of the reasons why dentistry was attractive to me. It's a little bit lower stakes in a lot of cases. We're taking people out of pain, but we're not having to make those calls and having to go through that. But I think the point that you're making is it's a really challenging and complicated place that you have to come to with all of this, emotionally, mentally, even physically in certain scenarios. And you can't do that just sitting around in school, in college. You have to go out and experience it. For you, it was years of experiences here in the States, and then, like you said, down in Central America, multiple experiences, which I think for you were the most formative. Yeah. So, but ultimately, I think you've come to this place where like for sure this is what you want to do, and that's a difficult thing for a lot of students that I've talked to is this really what I want to do? Because nowadays, it's certainly in dentistry, the price of getting into this field is insane. Yeah. The price that you have to pay, like monetarily, it's ridiculous. It's off the charts. And so many people are like, is this really what I want to do? And am I really going to want to pay off $300,000-$400,000 in debt and my entire life or however long it takes? So the experiences are kind of the only way that you can get to that point.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something that I'd like to talk about, that I had the pleasure of having speakers and videos through my undergrad years to harp on what we just talked about and the debt load. Mm-hmm. The suicide rate in veterinary medicine is very, very high. And it's a combination of burnout, never knowing that you're never going to pay off your debt, and then what we just talked about, euthanasia, going and dealing with these clients, not only euthanasia, but dealing with crazy clients, saying crazy things that wear on you over time. And like I said, the suicide rate is really high, and it's a real challenge for some of these people to know that they're never going to pay off their debt, and to go day after day just putting down these animals. And like, if you do that for so long, that can probably mess with you in a lot of ways mentally.
And yet both of us have chosen to go down to these professions and do it. But I think that there's like so much good that we experience on both ends. And so that's why because like, I know you feel the same way. I don't see myself doing anything else in my life at this point. I mean, I can see myself making YouTube videos, but that's at this point for me, mostly a hobby. Dentistry is, for me, it's my life. And I think for you, veterinary medicine is the same way.
Something that I realized, again, with time and these experiences, I've realized that I'm physically good at this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's something that you have to actually do it to realize that. Right. And some people aren't, some people may not, and they may realize however long down the road, they're like, I can't do this. Yeah. Like, so for example, like suturing and just cutting and placing standing wraps and just, there's so many things. Yeah. Like
dentistry, same way.
And like,
it's all hands on.
Another thing is like being physically capable. I'm decently strong, and especially working in a large animal, you need someone that can pull a sled with a 700-pound donkey on it, or whatever it is. I've realized that there's a lot of areas in the field that I can really succeed in.
Let's fast forward a little bit, because I want to get to some of the other stuff about your experience, and I can go ahead and give the background on this. So I think you mentioned it earlier, but you applied in 2020.
Yes.
You were accepted in 2021. Yes. So if you do the math there, that means you applied twice.
Yes.
Which was an experience that every single pre-professional student hopes they never have to go through, right? You hope you never have to have that period of time where you're not accepted and you have to kind of reevaluate things. So let's talk about maybe the first time around. First off, maybe you can just talk about like, what do you think went wrong, but where did you need to improve? Let's start with that.
So there's places where it did go wrong. And that's kind of something you said earlier, is I ramble. And I had a solid packet. I had solid experiences. I had a fine GPA. Good. I had, my recommendation letters were a little subpar, but what really kept me out my first time applying was my interview. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, is a huge portion, at least for UT. I know it's the way they come up with an overall grade on each individual, and a third of that grade is your interview.
Yeah.
So the interview is where I struggled majorly on my first time. And that's a whole nother topic, is nailing an interview. And vet school interviews are pretty specific as to what you need to know and the structure of them. But yeah, so the second time around, I had seen the worst of an interview, and I had a lot of time to go through all these, not necessarily recite answers in my head, but I knew the structure. I had time to prepare. I went through mock interviews. And I really spent a lot of time with it. So my second time around, it was the complete opposite. Like, I don't think my interview my second time could have went any better.
Yeah. Let's stick with the first time, because I think this is really an important topic. It's not something I had to deal with, and I thank God that I didn't, because I want to know, like, how tough was it the first time when you weren't accepted? What were your thoughts initially? Did you ever
when I didn't get accepted?
Yeah. Did you ever like reconsider it? What were the thoughts, or was it just immediate, like, I'm going to get in next year mode?
Well, you never know for certain. Even after my almost perfect interview my second time around, I was pretty confident, but I didn't know for certain. It sucked for a couple weeks, and then I had a couple people kind of walk me through the good side of taking a year off. And I feel really blessed to be able to get in my second time around, because I'm really I'm only taking a year off from school. It's not a lot of time, really, and I have a good bit of time to focus on myself and do what I want to do for a minute, instead of taking 3 months off and going straight into vet school. But yeah, to answer your question, it definitely sucked, but then I realized like how a big thing was my senior year was very challenging. I was taking basically 20 hours of upper level sciences both semesters, and especially through my spring semester. I found out in December, so through my spring semester I realized like I'm happy I'm not going straight back into school here. So and again, like I said, I feel blessed to get in my second time around, because if I didn't get in again, when you get going on 3-4 times of applying, that's when it really starts to get real. Because you need to figure out if all of this time and then plus 4 years of school is even worth it in the end. Like that is serious. So I really think getting in on your second time is really not a big deal for any of these situations.
Right. So you said a second ago that your interview was the toughest part. When you started to navigate the waters of that year in between, what were the things that you were like, I need to accomplish this? Did you feel like you needed more to add? Was it just sort of an all around, like, I need to add more experiences, I need to do better in my interview? Or how did that go?
The way that, and as you would assume, the way that I was told was they want to see that you really excelled in your time off. When you graduate and you have free time, they want to see that you're really using your time wisely and getting quality experience with it. Something that I didn't have any time with was research at that time, because COVID 2020, basically all the projects got canceled. And so everyone kind of got screwed over with that. But this year is when I really, really pushed it with research. I worked on 5 projects alone in 2021 with 5 different species of animals. And again, as I said earlier, I got put into these positions working with these doctors where I was working with other doctors that had other projects. And I got to know them, and I was like, hey, can I help out on your project? Can I help out on your project? So it was kind of just one led into another. And I think that can be the case for a lot of people. But if you show these doctors, research, again, this is a whole nother topic. But if you show these doctors that you're dedicated, that you're a hard worker, you're a good person, like they will help you a lot. And they will help you with recommendation letters. They will help you with introducing you to other doctors that are working on other projects. But I had the pleasure of seeing the research side of vet med. And it was great to do that. But so that's kind of where my application was lacking at that point, because I had good bit of small animal experience. I had small animal experience with specialties. I had some large animal experience at that point. Again, the interview I spent a lot of time with that, focusing on this year. But then also with all the free time, I got to spend it somewhere.
You used it wisely.
I did. I really did use it wisely. I did a lot. At one point I was working on like 3 projects at the same time in the mornings, and then through the midday, and then at night I would go into large animal at UT and work with emergency and critical care. And then I got into working in a mixed animal practice. I was working on like 1 project at that point, and some nights with ECC at UT, and the other nights or other days at this mixed animal practice. Like I was
kept it busy,
devoted my life to this.
Yeah.
Not only this year, but the past couple years, really. I mean, and I built on it, because as it got more and more real, and as I got closer to the application process, like I went to college and I wanted to have a college experience. I had my fun. I partied. I did this and that, and luckily I kept my grades well enough. I had 3.5, 3.4, 3.6, 3.5 basically through up until my senior year. In my senior year, I bumped it up a little bit and finished strong, which is another really good thing to do. And it's tough, like, because the classes get harder.
It's interesting. Yeah, we always have our lowest GPAs when the classes are the easiest, and then by the time we get to senior year, you're taking upper level sciences and you're trying to pull A's and everything.
Right.
You didn't do all of this alone.
No.
You had a companion the entire time.
I did.
Would you like to bring your companion to the podcast?
Oh, I thought you were talking
She's
about
furry.
you.
Go get your furry companion and bring her to the show here.
You want to talk about this thing for a while?
This is Winnie. She is Nick's Y.
Part of it.
Oh, since as an older brother, it's very easy for me to say that my younger brother is not responsible and that he is a child and he can't take care of himself. So you can imagine how the conversation went. I think it was Nick's junior year, maybe, or sophomore, junior year.
It's the end of my sophomore year when I got.
When he presented me the idea of getting a dog, I said, absolutely not. As it turns out, she has been one of the best things that could have happened to him in a lot of ways. And she's been a blessing to our family. So I wanted to show her on the podcast. And I think it's cool too, because with her, and she had a tough puppyhood. No.
Are you going to cry?
She had a tough puppyhood. She had a couple of injuries, one of them major. I think it was also interesting for you with the prospect of going into vet medicine. Like, you had your own companion and you had to navigate some of those waters early, which I think was cool.
Building a relationship with any animal, I think, is great for someone going in the profession, because you can kind of put yourself in the shoes of the clients that you're working with, and being able to have these experiences to relate to your clients is big. And watching these things grow is something very special. Oh yeah, I need to put this close to my mouth. But yeah, you mentioned some of the injuries she had. She fractured her femur, fully dislocated it, and that was a very tough experience, because it was like right before finals, my junior year, fall semester, and I'm dealing with a dog with a
serious
completely fractured femur. Like, it sucked. And then I lived alone my senior year, so having a dog with me she kept me sane, because I lived in a studio, like a really rundown studio. And she really has been a blessing for me.
And people ask me about dogs a lot, actually. Like, can I have a dog and go to dental school? I have a lot of classmates who have dogs. So I can't personally speak on that. Maybe in a couple years you can come back and report. We haven't decided yet how it's going to go, but I do think that there's obviously plenty of merits. And one thing for a lot of my classmates that have them is they all have husband, wife, partner, whoever it is, that can hang out and take care of the dog too, so that it's not just one person. But we'll see how that one goes.
It's going to be a challenge, because I know I'm going to be in class
most
of the day, and then I like to spend as many days as I can in the gym, spending at least an hour in there. And so she's going to be alone a lot of the time. But at least she'll get her playtime.
Let's talk about a couple weeks ago when you received the email that every student wants to receive.
Yeah.
And that you were being informed that you were accepted to the vet program at the University of Tennessee. Let's talk about that.
I knew the first word would say congratulations, because the first time around I remember reading it. I remember seeing the email pop up and reading the first few words, and I was like, that's not good. This doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
So I knew like what the email would look like, and as I stated earlier, I was pretty confident after my interview that I was going to get accepted. I thought that I had done, I have done a ton for this, and I knew that they would see that. My recommendation letters this year were from some high ups in the vet school at UT, and I knew that, I didn't have a weak point this time around at all. So I knew, like, I should get in.
Yeah.
But again, it's not certain until you get that email. And, I remember, like, the first time that I really, like, thought about the email was when I was in Costa Rica, because a girl on the trip found out while we were there that she got in. And I remember that was the first time I, like, was like, that day is going to be special. Like, because I was working, you work for years in the classroom, late nights studying, unpaid hours, scooping poop.
And there's
all this stuff.
There's no guarantee that you have a future. Yeah.
All of those hours and all of that sweat, literally blood, sweat, and tears. Like literally. For that moment. And yeah, I mean, it's
worth it.
It's hard. You can't really put it to words like that feeling, but it was definitely surreal. And I know I called my parents, and Steven was in the room. Y'all were back here in Nashville. I was in Knoxville when I found out, but I know that they went through similar, especially Dad, went through similar emotions, but it was, yeah, I mean, there's really no way to describe it.
Yeah.
Just you really, the best way to put it is you all of those hours come back, and all of that work, they're like, all of that time. There were so many times when I was just scooping poop for hours and cleaning stalls, and I was just like getting paid $7.25, sometimes not getting paid. Like all of that comes back, and you're just like, I did it, you know, all of that work.
For me, my biggest takeaway was like, it was the first time in my life I actually for 100% knew what my future was going to hold. Yeah. Like I knew for a fact I'm going to be a dentist. That was such a cool feeling that I think everybody kind of feels when they get accepted. And then you get back to school and you realize you have 4 more years with a bunch of work in front of you, but we'll get to that eventually. What are you planning on doing? And you've got like what, 7 months now, or 6-7 months before you start? What's the plan?
So yeah, probably 7.
What's the life plan?
7 months. A whole lot of nothing is what I plan on doing.
You got to do something.
I know. I've got really into fitness, as you know. I spend 6 to 7 days a week in the gym, so I take about 2 hours a day doing that. Well, that's kind of what. Damn. I mean, I can talk about.
That one didn't go well, did it?
Well, I mean,
he wants to get big. That's what he wants to do.
No, I mean,
he wants to get big, and that's the objective. For me, it was like, I want to read books, and I want to get smarter, and I want to do all this stuff. And
no, I definitely want to read more, because I'm definitely not a reader.
You got 7 months to do a lot with your life.
I'm gonna read. I think I'm gonna read more. I want to read more. It's kind of a.
It's always a challenge to put the phone down, isn't it?
It's just, as the years have gone on, it's just, I feel like it's become even easier and easier to just. Like,
it's funny. The phone when you take your phone out like at night before bed, it feels like you can literally turn your brain off and just sit there. Whereas whenever the prospect of reading is like, oh, I have to work.
It's that.
Which sucks, because honestly, I'll tell you this: when you actually do pick up that book at night, start reading for 5 minutes, you'll be sitting there like, why don't I do this more often? Yeah. It's so much better. But
don't get me wrong, I've definitely done it. But it's
I'm reassuring myself too, because I wish I read it.
This is a major problem with the world, is just how convenient everything is now, and like how we don't even think about it, but just how easy and convenient, and like no work is involved with pulling on your phone.
Yeah,
and watching YouTube. Like I'm big on YouTube. Watch Twitch live streams, and it's just like, I don't know. It's just a way for me to kind of like not think about anything else, and it's in a weird way. It's like kind of like a comforting thing with some of these streamers that I watch. We all
have that, honestly.
I spent a lot of. We've had a conversation about this, but it's hard to just accept the fact that this is a temporary part of my life, but I'll never have this again.
Yeah.
And it's like enjoy every day. And it's like. Okay, I'm like, I feel like I am trying. Like,
I get that question a lot. How do I spend this time before school starts? And I always find that question funny, because now that I'm in school, in dental school, people who have like all this time off for like literally for free, I'm like, gosh, I wish I had. I could tell. Let me answer it this way. I could tell you what I would do with that time if I had it right now. Because when you're in school and you're studying every day, all you want to do is think about other stuff. Yeah. So like I would love to go camping and fishing and do all this fun stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be a really good time. My 7 months, because I graduated in December of 2019 and didn't start dental school until, July of 2020. So I had that same period of time. Yeah. And my objective was just like, how can I use this time productively, but not entirely productive? Like I wanted to travel. I wanted to do all these things. Of course, COVID hit, but you want it to be like a fruitful time, because you want to make you want to make improvements in your life so that you can take those forward, and you want to start good. That's when I went on my health kick and I started to establish good habits. But also too, you want to try to make some memories that you can have forever, because it's a good time to do it.
We really took the same path with school.
I think that having the December to July or August is perfect.
You had a fifth year semester.
Yeah.
I didn't have that, but I basically
it worked out.
My fifth year semester was work and research and work and work and work and reapplying. But no,
I think it's a really good thing.
We're still 2 years apart in school.
It's funny how life works, isn't it? You had a chance there to get right behind me, but you didn't do it.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I tried.
I know you did, but it doesn't really matter now because you're in and you've got the future. So we could briefly talk. I know that we've talked about this actually a lot in the last couple of days, but give me a little bit, if you have just sort of your thoughts on like the future, because I know you said at the beginning of this you don't like to plan, but what are some of your thoughts on the future? That's
a great question, and I have spent some.
You don't have to have an answer though. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, and we have talked about this recently. Something that is really was really important and is still important was my Central America experiences. I kind of talked about this earlier, but I realized that what makes me the most happy in my life is taking a sick or injured animal and doing everything in my power. And after I go to school and learn all this stuff, I can do this, and fixing them. And something that I told you about is the differences between down there and up here with the quality of life. And it's just very appealing to me down there to make a difference. We can make money up here and save, do the same thing, but for the most part, the quality of life of animals up here is way better. Mm-hmm. And seeing and experiencing it down there really left the biggest impact I've had in my entire life on me. Mm-hmm. And so part of me, I keep saying this, but part of me feels like something is calling me down there. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that means at all at this point in my life, but I don't feel like I'm finished going down there, whether it's moving full-time down there or just spending weeks or months going on missionary trips. Who knows? Mm-hmm. So I definitely think Central America is in my future with whatever that means. A big question that everyone asks if you're in the profession or going into the profession is large or small animal. That's like the first question everyone asks. It's no answer. Not the time to figure that out, because I've had the pleasure of really getting a lot of experiences in both, and I could see myself doing both. Yeah. I know that my probably favorite thing in the entire world is dogs, so I feel like I'm probably gonna do a lot of dog work. But I do know I love, like, horses are great. Again, like I said, the actual medicine part of this stuff is very different. Working with a massive horse compared to a tiny little kitty cat is very different. Yeah. So I don't like to, as I said, I don't like to plan, but I do like to think about the future and I try not to, but obviously we all think about the future a little bit. I don't know where I'm going to end up.
It's just a beautiful time of your life because you basically have your entire life in front of you, and most people are like you. They don't know where they're going to end up. They don't know what exactly you're going to be doing. I've probably the majority of my class has no clue where they're going to end up. And like, seriously, and we're D2s, you know.
You in a sense are lucky to know that you have a place to go to. Like you said earlier, knowing that this is what you're going to do with your life is a great feeling. But I don't have that sort of, I'm going to take over Dad's practice, which I think is a good thing. And it's also, I don't know, it's good and bad. But that gives me more room to kind of do whatever I want to do. And I don't know exactly what I want to do yet.
And you'll find out in the next 4 years.
Well,
you will.
I know a lot of fourth years that don't even know what they want to do. So just like,
I think you'll get a better idea. I will say that.
I think I will.
So, yeah, I mean, it's been really fun to watch you go through this process. And I know that you could talk about all this for years. I thought it'd be cool to bring you on because there are a lot of similarities between your experience and those that are had by students across the country and across the world.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, our objectives in undergrad were the same. Yeah. They were ultimately the same. How do you get the grades? How do you have enough experiences? And ultimately, how are you accepted into the next point? And then you get into the next point, and you have to navigate those waters, which is what I like to try to do here, to explain some of that. But I thought this would be good, and it has been.
One thing that I would kind of like to leave, if there's any pre-vet kids out here watching, as we talked about this earlier a little bit, but something I want to leave them with is, through the application process and through especially the interview process, the best way, I think, to get in, and I said this earlier, but to hit the high notes of really everything: leadership, volunteering, service. Your vet experiences are huge. But you, in the best way that you know how, and this will take time in your head, but you need to stand apart from other people, and that's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. But especially in the interview, you have to go into it as, I am me, I do this great, like, I'm so well-versed here, like, so many things that you can do through your years to really be unique. And that is, it's not easy to do, but you can do it. And you have to leave, like, especially for the interview, you have to leave a lasting impact on them. And again, that's so hard to do. But you need to walk away with saying, wow, like, I know that I showed them that I'm a good person and I have all of this behind me, and they will walk away with, wow, he or she is
that was a good one.
Yeah. And that's so hard to do. But just think about that and really internalize it and figure out, like I said earlier, your why and how you will contribute to the profession in whatever way. You can't just be like everyone else and love animals and think it's cool to work on a dog or a cat. Like, you really need to dig deep, and all my Central America experiences were really helpful with that. But
well, this man could talk for days.
I struggle with rambling.
You have a lot to say.
I do.
And we appreciate that. Because this is a podcast.
It's just there's so much that goes.
Yeah, there is. It's hard to keep it compact.
You have that standardized test, which is huge. But there's just so many areas to it. And I do struggle badly with rambling. That was a major problem with my first interview, is like, you just want to like talk and you can't. You have to stay concise and like to the point.
Maybe you should start a YouTube channel. That's a no, folks.
Well, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, it is. It's been tough to balance it. But anyways, I do want to go ahead and wrap it up here. I do think that we covered a lot of things that are really important, and I do think there are going to be more than one or two students, pre-dental students, who listen to this and say, "Wow, there's so many other people out there going through the exact same thing I'm going through." It looks a little different, right? But it really is a very similar experience. So thank you for coming on and giving your valuable insights.
Sure, man.
Telling your story. Congratulations.
I got nothing better to do right now.
I know, he's free. And I also don't either, but mine's only lasting a couple days, basically. I'm like already more than halfway through with my break, which sucks. But congrats again. And we look forward to watching, to see how your future goes, where you end up. And
maybe put me on the channel some other time.
I'll think about it. We'll get you back and do an update once you're in vet school and you've been doing it for a while, and maybe you'll have some more interesting things to say.
Yeah.
But
more interesting.
Not like more interesting in the sense that what you said was not interesting, but some additional interesting things to say. There we go. So thanks again, Nick, for coming on. And buddy, we'll do this again in the future.
All right.
Sweet. See ya.
See you later.
Thank you for listening to the Teeth Time podcast. I hope this conversation was at least somewhat enjoyable for you. Remember to check out my YouTube channel. That's Stephen P. Ray on YouTube, where you'll find plenty of visual content about the life of a dental student and creator. Also check out my Instagram at stephen.p.ray.dentistry. Long name, I know. I appreciate each and every one of you. This has been Teeth Time, and I'm out.